Ladies and gentlemen, as Bitcoin has been correcting from 124,000, and the further this correction has gone, the more and more people have stopped caring about the altcoin market, at least on a local level. And, the term altcoin season is probably something you haven't heard, at least for a couple of weeks now, or at least something you probably haven't heard from serious thinkers in the market. Of course, there's going to be a subcategory of crypto influencers who talk about altcoins regardless of what's happening in the market. But generally speaking, when Bitcoin corrects, it steals the attention of the market, rightfully so, as it does lead the market. But in this video, I'm obviously going to discuss the Bitcoin situation. There is an interesting short-term development, but I'm also going to look into the kind of future horizon for the altcoin market and for Ethereum. What happens if Bitcoin bounces? Will we see that altcoin season? Will we see that Ethereum season continue? And if Bitcoin goes downwards, what happens to the altcoin market? I'm going to get into some discussion there in regards to altcoin season. Before we get into it today, just go ahead and leave a question if you have one for tomorrow's video. I'm doing a Q&A video tomorrow. Ask me anything about Bitcoin, altcoins, Ethereum, traditional market, macroeconomy, and I'll answer it. So that question can be found on the YouTube page. Just click on the post section and you'll find that post. Just one more thing here. It's the Bitunix Exchange. So it's global, it's non-KYC. There's no location-based restrictions. You don't need a VPN to sign up or use this exchange, which is exceptionally rare these days. Made even rarer, by the way, by the fact that it's never been hacked before. Not a single security breach in 4.5 years of live trading data. This is just a great exchange all around in my view, and I use it for that reason. Use my link down below to sign up, get access to an exchange with everything you would expect from a major exchange, but even cheaper. That link down below gives you a 15% trading fee discount. So use that link down below to sign up, help out the channel, help out yourself. Let's get into the content. So just a quick little update on Ethereum, on Bitcoin before we get into the altcoin and Ethereum analysis here. It shouldn't take too long today, but something interesting has happened on Bitcoin. Of course, Bitcoin is bouncing from a critical level of support, as you can see here in green. That level is about $107.3 thousand. It's a neckline of support that's been available to view on the Bitcoin chart for months on end now, since December 2024. This correction has become quite intense because we saw a rejection from this white line on the screen here. Now, that white line isn't just a random line. It's a line that goes right backwards, actually, from 2017. Okay, look at the 2017 all-time high, cut across the 2021 all-time highs, and you see that white line cutting across these recent highs in 2024 and even up to now. And you see a rejection from that white line as well. That's a zone in which we got very cautious, and now we're plummeting down to support. Now, luckily, as we've mentioned in prior videos, in yesterday's video, I mentioned the fractal we have playing out from prior cycles. Luckily, this is something that we see quite often during bull markets, pullbacks to necklines of support and retesting bull market support bands. It's not abnormal at all. So at this point, I'm not concerned. Now, if we drop below this level, that's when concern really starts to arise. But at this point, I think the Bitcoin looks okay from a macro perspective still. Obviously, this is a threat, and I've discussed that threat relentlessly on this channel. Just 2 days ago, I made a video specifically analyzing the main threat I see, and you can go watch that video if you're interested. But ultimately, my conclusion is nothing really has changed unless we break 107.3 thousand. And so for that reason, you can just take that for what it is. That's the conclusion. 107.3 thousand is the level that matters. As long as we're above that, we're doing okay. Now, on a short-term basis, something very interesting has happened. We have that 110.5K level in red. You might be thinking, well, what's the significance of that? Well, if we zoom backwards here on the hourly chart, we can see that that level has been rejected from and support flipped multiple times over and over again on a short-term basis. And actually, we've broken above that level as we speak right now, which is very good. We've flipped it for support, but now we're actually facing kind of the upper bound of this broad support zone. So obviously, when you fall into a support zone like this, the way through which I'm identifying it being a support zone is by using a lower bound level and an upper bound level. We fell through that upper bound level into the lower bound level, and hence to get back through this support zone, we need to break above the upper bound level again. So actually, part of this support zone is currently acting as resistance on a short-term level, and that support, that prior support, which is now resistance, is about 111.8K. So that's pretty much the critical zone to watch on the very short term, 111.8K. And the zone to watch to the downside is going to be 110.5. So a very narrow price range. I expect a resolution fairly swiftly there within the next day or two. And I'll certainly update you on that when it occurs. But basically, I want to dive into the altcoin market now on Ethereum, as that's the point of the video. The market is sitting on a critical support zone that could change the game. We break it, we potentially enter a more bearish market environment. We bounce from it, everything's as usual, right? And this is big for altcoins. We know this is a trigger point. We know that the Bitcoin weekly chart RSI is at a trigger point as well on the triangle there. Same thing for total cryptocurrency market cap. There's trigger points all over this region. And basically what this tells us is Bitcoin could be on the cusp. Again, either, I'm not going to make any big claims here, but could be on the cusp of completely ruining itself or actually just beginning a launch pad for that next big macro move, potentially the last one to the upside. Now, this is actually more interesting from an altcoin and Ethereum perspective than it is for a Bitcoin perspective. The only thing I care about on Bitcoin right now is whether this level holds and whether we bounce. Other than that, I'm not looking to buy Bitcoin. And the reason being is because it's so clear to me that the Ethereum market, and even on a more smaller scale, the altcoin market has dramatically outperformed Bitcoin. There's not really much reason to even be getting into Bitcoin here from a risk-reward perspective. You know, since April, right, since the April lows, which is the end of our last very significant correction, Bitcoin is upwards about 66%, while Ethereum, specifically Ethereum, by the way, not even really the altcoin market, Ethereum is upwards close to 260%. It's dramatically outperformed Bitcoin. It's 4x'd Bitcoin's performance. The broader altcoin market since April is performing basically on par with Bitcoin, but if we actually narrow down the time frame, and we go since something like this correction here in June, we see that the total three, the altcoin market's up 50%, while Bitcoin since June is only upwards about 26%. So, you know, on a broader scale, we very much were and still are, by the way, even during this correction, in an Ethereum season. But on a more local scale, we're actually starting to see altcoins pull ahead of Bitcoin. So we could be in the transition period between an Ethereum season and an altcoin season. Now, even during this correction, by the way, this just shows that, you know, it's not, the market participants at least don't see this as, oh, the end of the bull market, because if it was the end of the bull market, they'd be running for the hills and getting the hell out of Ethereum and altcoins as fast as possible. What we see, though, is a Bitcoin correcting about 13%, while Ethereum, which is strongly in the dominant position, correcting about 17%, but currently only down 12%, while Bitcoin's still down 13%. Now, that sounds like it's similar, but given the market cap disparity between Bitcoin and Ethereum, that's actually a dramatic outperformance still of Ethereum against Bitcoin, especially considering what usually happens when Bitcoin corrects. So Ethereum is still having a real big grasp on the market here. It is still very much in control in a lot of ways. And even more interestingly, the altcoin market is only down about 6% currently. So again, that just shows you that we're probably in a transition period between the Ethereum season and the altcoin season, with Ethereum still leading the way. So it's very clear, with very little analysis that actually needs to be done, that all that needs to happen here is Bitcoin to bounce and the status quo, which is Ethereum dominance and altcoins starting to pull up as well, will continue. I see no reason for that not to occur. In fact, I see major trigger points on the Ethereum chart and the altcoin chart, which I simply don't see on Bitcoin, right? We see Ethereum testing its all-time high resistance from 2021. We see the altcoin market testing, again, its all-time high resistance, just like Ethereum from 2021. Those are major, major trigger points. Bitcoin simply doesn't have a trigger point like that, except for its all-time high. From a more local level here at 125, 126K, there is, obviously there's charts like the logarithmic regression channel, which I've talked about quite a lot, but there's actually no guarantee that those even break. They could mark a bull market top, and that's a whole other topic for another video. The point is, there are clear, non-hidden, hidden away in regression channels that most people don't see. There's clear resistance on Ethereum and the total three that are acting as major trigger points for even further outperformance of Bitcoin. And all that Bitcoin needs to do is just stay alive to allow that market environment to ensue. Further kind of consolidating this argument here, we look at the Ethereum BTC chart, and we see this yellow line, particularly take a look at that, which we've flipped for support now. We're on that level for support, again, ready to bounce from that level. All we need to see is Bitcoin lead the way, and we will continue skyrocketing. And the exact same thing on the Bitcoin dominance chart, finding a support zone from right back here in August 2023. All we need to do is see Bitcoin lift off a little bit more and actually, get back in a secure position, and we will very likely see the Bitcoin dominance chart break down, which will coincide with a potentially confirmed altcoin season. So the conclusion of this video, and a lot of you probably would have assumed this anyway, but it is a conclusion that is worth making, is that all Bitcoin needs to do is stay alive. All Bitcoin needs to do is hold above this 107.3K level. And we have a prime circumstance for a continuation of the Ethereum season and a potential development into an altcoin season. Yes, we have the regular 4-year cycle saying we only potentially have a month or two left. But a month or two, is actually enough time, and there's nothing really saying that they have to last longer than that. Ethereum has been outperforming Bitcoin already for about 5 months now. I know that a lot of people aren't happy about what altcoins have been doing, but the fact of the matter is altcoin seasons don't have an established trend in how long they usually last. And another fact of the matter is altcoin seasons, generally speaking, happen in very short bursts. Like, yes, Bitcoin dominance goes down for a long period of time, but the vast majority of the gains that altcoins make against Bitcoin, historically speaking, happen in these quick little 2 or 3 month period on both occasions historically. So if that happens again, we will see a very major altcoin season in a very compact short period of time. Or at least it's possible that we see that. I'm just simply not ruling it out yet. What I can say confidently is that Ethereum will continue to do very, very well. Again, all we need to see for that to occur is this Bitcoin bounce, and that's why my eyes are so firmly planted at that 107.3k level. Now, with all of this said, I know you might come away from this video thinking I'm just some mega bullish degenerate clown, but actually, I think that's a completely unjustified takeaway from this video, actually. But if you do think that, first of all, unsubscribe because you haven't heard a word I've said. But second of all, just to clarify, I actually don't think that buying right now on the Ethereum market, on the altcoin market, on Bitcoin, I don't think it's a smart idea. I think we need to see a little bit more proof by Bitcoin that it's going to be doing the right thing and bouncing here. I also don't think that selling is the right idea because we are on a considerable macro support zone. So I think that actually sidelining or waiting is the right move here. I'm just looking forward and saying, hey, look, if Bitcoin does bounce here, it's probably going to be quite good for Ethereum and potentially even quite good for altcoins as well. One more thing I'll mention is in regards to how much time we have left, of course, the 4-year cycle can break. So it's not like we only have 1 to 2 months left. And even if we do see a regular cycle, altcoins have in the past ran a little bit longer than Bitcoin. So we're talking about a month longer than Bitcoin in 2017 and the first half of 2021. That can certainly happen again as well. So my fingers are well and truly crossed for Bitcoin holding on to this 107.3k level. I don't necessarily think it will be bull market ending if we drop below that level, but it certainly would be very concerning, especially at this part of the cycle, and I wouldn't see any reason to be holding anything at that point until further clarity is had. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it today. Again, go ahead and leave your question for an upcoming video. If you have a question about Bitcoin, altcoins, Ethereum, anything, macroeconomy, chuck it there. I'll answer it in the next one. Appreciate you guys. Check out the Bitunix Exchange. It's a major exchange. It's got everything you'd expect from a major exchange, except it's global non-KYC, never been hacked before. These are exceptional features that most exchanges do not have. So check out my link down below to sign up and get a 15% trading fee discount attached to your account for life. This is the exchange that I use for trading on a daily basis. I don't have any other exchange at this point. And that says something. It really does. So links down below. Appreciate it. Have a good one, guys.